The city of Savannah had a way of clinging to you. Its cobblestone streets, lined with moss-draped oaks, whispered tales of love, loss, and secrets buried beneath centuries of history. By day, it was a picture of southern charm, pastel-colored homes, bustling markets, and the faint melody of jazz drifting through the air. But as night fell, Savannah transformed. Shadows stretched long, and the air seemed to hum with the ghosts of its past. Sylvia Harper didn't believe in ghosts, not the kind that haunted houses, anyway. But as she stood beneath the sprawling canopy of Forsyth Park, her gaze fixed on the fountain that had stood there longer than anyone could remember, she felt the familiar chill of the past creeping over her. This city held memories she had spent a lifetime running from, yet here she was, drawn back to it like a moth to flame. Sylvia wasn't just another visitor captivated by Savannah's allure. She had a mission. As the founder of New Horizons, a nonprofit dedicated to helping at-risk youth, Sylvia had returned to her hometown with a purpose. Her program aimed to transform the lives of kids teetering on the edge of society's cracks. She wanted to give them a chance to rewrite their stories, the way she wished someone had given her the chance to rewrite hers. But there was more to her return than her organization's work. Beneath her polished exterior, beneath the awards and recognition that marked her success, Sylvia carried an ache, a question that had followed her since she was 10 years old. It was the year her father disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a family shattered by uncertainty and grief. The case had gone cold, and so had Sylvia's hope of ever finding answers. Until now, as she walked through the park, Sylvia's sharp eyes caught sight of a boy sitting on the edge of a bench, his head bent low over a sketch pad. He couldn't have been more than 12, yet his focus was intense, his hands moving deftly as charcoal brought shapes to life on the page. Around him, a small crowd had gathered, murmuring their admiration. Sylvia's curiosity piqued. She moved closer, her heels clicking softly on the pathway. From behind the boy, she caught a glimpse of his work, a hauntingly vivid image of a wrought iron gate, its intricate design twined with vines that seemed almost alive. It was beautiful and eerie, the kind of art that told a story even before you knew the words. "That's incredible," Sylvia said, her voice cutting through the quiet awe of the crowd. The boy looked up, startled. His eyes, dark and guarded, met hers for a brief moment before darting back to his sketch pad. He didn't reply, but his hand stilled on the page. "What's your name?" Sylvia pressed gently, her tone warm but firm. "Lucas," he said after a long pause, his voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Lucas," Sylvia continued, "you've got a real gift. Do you sell these?" He nodded, hesitating before adding, "Sometimes. It helps." "Helps with what?" Sylvia asked, though she already knew the answer. Lucas shrugged. "Food. Whatever I need." Sylvia studied him for a moment, her heart aching at the familiar resilience in his voice. She had heard that tone before, in herself, years ago. "Do you always draw from imagination?" she asked, gesturing toward the sketch. Lucas hesitated, then shook his head. "Not always," he admitted. "Sometimes I draw things I see, in dreams." His words hung in the air, heavy with something Sylvia couldn't quite place. She glanced at the drawing again, the gate tugging at the edges of her memory. Where had she seen it before? "Lucas," she said carefully, "have you ever drawn something you didn't understand?" Lucas frowned, his fingers tightening around the edges of his sketch pad. After a moment, he nodded. "Yeah, sometimes it's like, I don't know where it comes from." Sylvia's heart quickened. There was something here, something more than coincidence. And for the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of a long-buried hope. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her, "what would you say if I told you I might know where your drawings come from?" The boy's eyes widened, curiosity and suspicion flickering in their depths. "I'd say you're crazy," he replied, though his tone was more intrigued than dismissive. Sylvia smiled faintly. "Then let me prove you wrong." The drive to the outskirts of Savannah was quiet, the kind of silence that felt alive with unspoken thoughts. Sylvia gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing as Lucas sat beside her, flipping through his sketch pad. Each page revealed drawings that seemed to come from another time. A wrought iron gate, a crumbling fountain, and a house Sylvia knew all too well. It was her childhood home. "Have you been there?" she asked, breaking the silence. Her voice betrayed the mix of curiosity and unease that had been simmering since she first saw Lucas's work. "No," Lucas said simply, his eyes glued to the sketch in front of him. It's just there, in my head, like I've always known it. Sylvia swallowed hard. That house had been more than just a home. It was a symbol of everything she'd lost. Her father had vanished from its walls without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and a family fractured beyond repair. For years, she had avoided even thinking about it, but now it seemed the house was calling her back, pulling her into its mysteries. As they approached, the landscape changed. The bustling city faded into quiet streets lined with oak trees, their branches intertwining like old secrets. When the house came into view, Sylvia felt a knot tighten in her chest. Time had not been kind to the place. The paint was peeling, the windows clouded with grime, and the once pristine garden was overrun with weeds. Yet, it still stood, stubborn and unyielding, as if daring her to step inside. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas stared out the window, his sketchpad forgotten in his lap. "It's the same as my drawing," he murmured, his tone a mix of awe and unease. "How is that possible?" Sylvia didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she stepped out of the car and approached the house. The wooden porch groaned under her weight, the sound echoing like a reluctant welcome. Lucas followed, clutching his sketchpad as if it could shield him from whatever they were about to find. The air inside was thick with dust and memories. Sylvia's eyes adjusted to the dim light streaming through the grimy windows. The furniture was covered in sheets, and the once vivid wallpaper had faded to a dull, peeling gray. Every step felt like an intrusion, as if the house itself was watching them. "This place feels heavy," Lucas said, his voice breaking the silence. Sylvia nodded. It always did. They moved cautiously through the rooms, Sylvia's footsteps guided by a mixture of instinct and memory. When they reached the study, she hesitated. This had been her father's sanctuary, the place where he spent hours poring over documents and plans. The door creaked open, revealing a room frozen in time. A thick layer of dust coated the desk, but the papers scattered across it remained undisturbed. Lucas wandered to a corner of the room, his eyes drawn to a small cabinet. "There's something here," he said, kneeling to open it. Inside was a box, weathered and unremarkable, but it seemed to call out to both of them. Sylvia joined him, her heart pounding as Lucas lifted the lid. Inside were letters, photographs, and a worn leather journal. She reached for the journal, her fingers trembling as she opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was her father's. "What does it say?" Lucas asked. Leaning closer, Sylvia scanned the pages, her breath hitching as fragments of her father's thoughts came to life. He wrote about a business partner, a man he trusted but began to suspect. There were references to hidden truths and securing the legacy, but the final entry stopped her cold. "If anything happens to me, the answers are in the gate." "The gate," she whispered, her mind racing back to Lucas's drawing. The wrought iron gate entwined with vines. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a clue. Lucas stared at her, his wide eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "What does it mean?" he asked. Sylvia closed the journal, her resolve hardening. "It means we're not done here. This is just the beginning." Sylvia Harper was no stranger to Savannah's hidden corners, but the streets she found herself walking now were a world apart from the city's polished charm. Here, the cobblestones were uneven, and the air was tinged with the acrid scent of smoke from a nearby food cart. This was the part of Savannah where people disappeared into shadows, where survival was an art, and childhood was a privilege, not a guarantee. She had come here to check on one of New Horizons' outreach programs, a mobile unit providing meals and supplies to the city's at-risk youth. The bright van parked at the edge of the square seemed almost out of place, a splash of color in a sea of gray. Volunteers bustled about, handing out sandwiches and water bottles to a line of children and teenagers who approached with equal parts gratitude and guardedness. Sylvia scanned the crowd, her practiced eye catching glimpses of faces that lingered a little too long or hung back on the edges. That was when she saw him, a boy sitting cross-legged on the pavement near the fountain, a sketchpad balanced on his knees. He was hunched over, his hands moving swiftly as he drew, oblivious to the commotion around him. Intrigued, Sylvia approached, weaving through the clusters of people until she stood a few feet away. From her angle, she could just make out the outline of what he was drawing. A tree, its gnarled branches twisting upward like skeletal fingers. It was hauntingly beautiful, but there was something about it that felt familiar. "That's quite the talent you've got," Sylvia said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but carried the authority of someone used to commanding attention. The boy looked up sharply, his eyes dark and wary. For a moment, Sylvia thought he might bolt, but he stayed put, his fingers tightening on the edges of his sketch pad. "Thanks," he muttered, his tone more dismissive than appreciative. Sylvia crouched to meet his eye level, undeterred by his guarded demeanor.
"Do you sell these?"
she asked, nodding toward the sketch. The boy hesitated before giving a slight shrug. "Sometimes, people like trees and stuff. They give me a couple of bucks." Sylvia studied him closely. His clothes were frayed, his sneakers worn thin, but there was a quiet defiance in his posture that spoke of someone used to fighting for every scrap of dignity. "What's your name?" she asked. "Lucas," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Well, Lucas," Sylvia said, offering a small smile. "I'm Sylvia. I run New Horizons. Maybe you've seen the van around?" Lucas shrugged again, his eyes darting to the group of kids gathered by the van. "Yeah, I've seen it. Don't need it." Sylvia raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, she nodded toward the sketch pad. "Mind if I take a look?" Lucas hesitated, his fingers hovering protectively over the paper, but eventually, he handed it to her. Sylvia flipped through the pages, her heart catching at what she saw. The drawings weren't just good, they were extraordinary. Each one was filled with intricate details and an emotional depth far beyond Lucas's years. And then she saw it, a gate, wrought iron, with twisting vines curling around its bars. It was a striking image. But what stunned Sylvia was its familiarity. She had seen this gate before. It was the one that stood at the entrance of her childhood home. "Where did you see this?" Sylvia asked, her voice sharp with a mixture of shock and curiosity. Lucas looked confused. "Nowhere. I just drew it." "You've never been to a house with this gate?" she pressed. He shook his head. "No. Sometimes I see things in my head, like dreams." Sylvia stared at him, her mind racing. This wasn't possible. The gate wasn't just similar, it was identical. Every curve, every detail was exactly as she remembered it. But how could a boy she'd never met have drawn something so personal, so tied to her past? "Lucas," she said carefully, "do you have more drawings like this?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, a few. Can I see them?" Lucas seemed reluctant but pulled a battered folder from his backpack. Sylvia opened it, her breath catching as she flipped through the sketches. A crumbling fountain, a shadowy figure standing in the distance, a sprawling southern manor. Her southern manor. Sylvia felt a chill run through her. "Lucas, where did you learn to draw these?" "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're just there." Sylvia closed the folder, her hands trembling. This boy, this chance encounter, was no coincidence. Somehow, he was connected to her past, to the questions that had haunted her for years. "Lucas," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I think we need to talk." The silence in Sylvia's car was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of paper as Lucas flipped through his sketch pad. Sylvia gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles pale. Her thoughts raced, tangled in the impossible connections between this boy, his drawings, and her past. The gate, the house, the fountain, these weren't mere coincidences. They couldn't be. "Where are we going?" Lucas asked, his voice cautious. Sylvia glanced at him, her expression softening. "There's something I need to show you. Something I think you've already seen, even if you don't realize it yet." Lucas frowned, clutching the sketch pad to his chest like a shield. "Why does it matter? They're just drawings." "They're not just drawings," Sylvia replied firmly, her voice tinged with urgency. "They're pieces of a puzzle I've been trying to solve for most of my life." Lucas didn't respond, but the curiosity in his eyes betrayed his guarded exterior. Sylvia turned her focus back to the road as the cityscape faded into quiet. Tree-lined streets. They were heading toward the outskirts, to the crumbling remnants of her childhood home. The house stood as a shadow of its former self, its once grand facade now weathered by time and neglect. Ivy crawled along the brick walls, and the iron gate Lucas had unknowingly drawn stood ajar, its hinges rusted but still intact. Sylvia parked the car and stepped out, motioning for Lucas to follow. "This is the house from your drawings," Sylvia said, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "My house," Lucas stared, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. "It looks exactly like the picture," he murmured. "But I've never been here before." Sylvia led him through the gate and up the overgrown path to the front porch. The wooden steps creaked under their weight as they entered the house. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and memories. Sylvia hesitated in the entryway, her gaze sweeping over the familiar but faded interiors. Lucas lingered behind her, his fingers trailing along the edge of the banister. "This place feels strange," Lucas said softly, "like it's full of stories." Sylvia nodded. "It is. And one of those stories is mine." In the study, the air felt heavier, as if the room itself held its breath. Sylvia gestured toward a large wooden desk, its surface cluttered with faded papers and an old leather-bound journal. "This was my father's," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He spent hours here, working, writing, until he disappeared." Lucas stepped closer, his gaze drawn to the journal. "What happened to him?" "No one knows," Sylvia admitted, her voice tight. "He vanished when I was 10. No warning, no explanation, just gone." Lucas's brow furrowed as he studied the room. His eyes landed on a faded photograph pinned to the corkboard above the desk. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing to the image. Sylvia followed his gaze. The photograph was of her father standing beside another man, their smiles broad and confident. Sylvia's breath hitched. "That's him. My father. And the man next to him? I don't know." Lucas tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "I've seen him before." Sylvia turned to him sharply. "Where?" Lucas hesitated, then reached for his sketch pad. He flipped through the pages until he found the one he was looking for. It was a portrait, a detailed rendering of the same man from the photograph. "I drew this a few months ago," Lucas said quietly. "I don't know why. He just came to me." Sylvia stared at the drawing, her heart pounding. The resemblance was uncanny, right down to the sharp lines of his jaw and the faint scar above his eyebrow. "This man," she said, her voice shaking. "He's the key. He has to be." Determined, Sylvia sifted through the desk, her fingers brushing against the leather journal. She opened it carefully, flipping through pages filled with her father's neat handwriting. One entry caught her eye. "I don't trust him anymore. He's hiding something. If anything happens to me, the truth is in the gate." "The gate?" Sylvia whispered, her mind flashing back to Lucas's drawing. The twisting vines, the intricate ironwork. It wasn't just a detail, it was a clue. "What does it mean?" Lucas asked, leaning closer. Sylvia's eyes burned with a mix of determination and fear. "It means we're going to find out." Together, they left the study and ventured outside to the gate. Sylvia's hands trembled as she ran her fingers along the cold iron, searching for anything unusual. Lucas watched silently, his sketchpad tucked under his arm. Finally, Sylvia's hand brushed against a hidden latch, cleverly disguised among the ornate designs. With a soft click, a small compartment opened, revealing a folded piece of paper. Sylvia unfolded it carefully, her breath catching as she read the contents. It was a map, marked with a location deep in the woods on the outskirts of Savannah. "What's there?" Lucas asked, his voice hushed. Sylvia looked at him, her eyes alight with a determination he hadn't seen before. "I don't know, but we're going to find out." Sylvia's hands gripped the steering wheel as she drove toward the address on the map, the old paper resting on the dashboard beside her. Lucas sat quietly in the passenger seat, his sketchpad open but untouched. The tension in the air was palpable. Neither spoke, but their minds raced with questions. What awaited them at the marked location? Would it finally bring closure to Sylvia's lifelong search for answers? The map led them deep into the woods outside Savannah, where the roads became narrow and overgrown with vines. Eventually, they arrived at a clearing, where the remains of a once grand estate loomed. The structure was little more than a shadow of its former self, its walls crumbling and the windows darkened with decades of neglect. The only sound was the distant rustle of leaves, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "This place looks like it's been abandoned for years," Lucas said, breaking the silence. Sylvia nodded, her eyes fixed on the mansion. "It might hold the answers we need." They stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath their feet. As they approached the building, Lucas hesitated. "Do you think someone's still here?" Sylvia glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. But if they are, we'll find out." The front door was ajar, its hinges groaning as Sylvia pushed it open. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and mildew. The entryway was grand, with a sweeping staircase that once spoke of wealth and power. "Now," It was a monument to decay. Sylvia's gaze swept the room, landing on a set of doors at the far end of the hall. "This way," she said, her voice steady despite the unease crawling up her spine. Lucas followed closely as they moved deeper into the house. Each step echoed, a reminder of how empty the place was or seemed to be. They reached a study that bore a striking resemblance to the one in Sylvia's childhood home. A large desk dominated the room, its surface cluttered with papers and an old ledger. Sylvia's fingers brushed against the desk, her heart pounding as she opened the ledger. The pages were filled with financial transactions, most of them ordinary. But one entry caught her eye. A large transfer of funds to an unknown account, dated just weeks before her father's disappearance. Alongside the transaction was a note written in bold, deliberate letters. "Final arrangement with J. D."
J.
"D," Sylvia whispered. Her mind raced as she tried to connect the initials to the man in the photograph, the same man Lucas had drawn. "Do you think it's him?" Lucas asked, leaning over to look at the ledger. "It has to be," Sylvia replied. "He's tied to my father's disappearance. I'm sure of it." As they examined the desk, a noise from the hallway made them both freeze. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Sylvia motioned for Lucas to stay quiet as the door creaked open, revealing a man in his late 60s. His sharp features and piercing eyes were unmistakable. It was the man from the photograph. Well, the man said, his voice calm but laced with menace. "I didn't think anyone would be foolish enough to come here." Sylvia straightened, her fear giving way to a steely resolve. "Who are you?" The man smirked. "You already know the answer to that. I'm John Douglas, or J. D, as your father called me." Sylvia's heart raced. "You worked with my father. What happened to him? Where is he?" John's expression darkened. "Your father was a good man. Too good. He got in the way of things he didn't understand. So I had to take care of it." Sylvia's stomach churned. "You mean you killed him?" John shrugged. "Let's just say he's not coming back. He had information that could have ruined everything we built. I couldn't let that happen. You destroyed my family," Sylvia said, her voice trembling with anger. "For what? Money?" "For survival," John snapped. "Your father was naive. He thought integrity mattered more than power. He was wrong." Lucas stepped forward, his small frame trembling but determined. "You're a monster," he said, his voice breaking the tense silence. John's gaze shifted to Lucas, his smirk returning. "And who's this? Your little accomplice?" Sylvia placed a protective hand on Lucas's shoulder. "He's someone who's not afraid of the truth. Unlike you," John laughed. A cold, hollow sound. "Truth? The truth is, your father's gone, and nothing you do here will change that." Sylvia's hands balled into fists. "No, but I can make sure you pay for what you've done." John's confidence wavered for the first time as Sylvia reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, showing him the photos she had taken of the ledger and other documents. "These are enough to expose everything?" she said. "And believe me, I will." The confrontation ended abruptly as John backed away, his facade of control crumbling. "You'll regret this," he spat before disappearing into the shadows of the house. Sylvia and Lucas stood in the study, the weight of the moment settling over them.
"Are you okay?"
she asked, turning to Lucas. He nodded, though his hands still trembled. "What now?" Sylvia looked down at the ledger, her father's handwriting a poignant reminder of the man she had lost. "Now, we finish what he started. We make sure the truth comes out." As they left the house, the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, casting light on the path ahead. Sylvia felt a sense of closure she hadn't known was possible. She couldn't change the past, but she could honor her father's legacy by ensuring that justice was served. Lucas walked beside her, his sketchpad clutched tightly in his hands. "You think he'll come after us?" he asked. Sylvia smiled faintly. "Let him try. We're not afraid anymore." The weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air as Sylvia and Lucas returned to her car, the ledger and photographs carefully tucked into her bag. The revelations about her father's fate and John Douglas's betrayal had shaken Sylvia to her core, but it had also ignited a fire within her. The truth she had spent a lifetime seeking was now within reach, and she wasn't about to let fear stop her from pursuing it. As they drove away from the dilapidated mansion, the road ahead felt as uncertain as the journey they were about to embark on. Lucas sat quietly beside her, his sketchpad resting on his lap. Though for once, he wasn't drawing. His young face was etched with worry, his usual defiance dimmed by the events of the day. "What are we going to do now?" Lucas finally asked, his voice small but steady. Sylvia glanced at him, her jaw tightening. We expose him. We expose everything. Back at Sylvia's apartment, the two of them spread the evidence across her dining table. The ledger, the photographs, the map. Each piece was a fragment of a puzzle that pointed to John Douglas's corruption and her father's tragic fate. Sylvia's mind raced as she tried to connect the dots, her instincts as a social advocate kicking in. We need to take this to someone who can do something about it, Sylvia said, pacing the room. The police? The media, someone who can bring him down. Lucas looked up from the ledger, his finger tracing the lines of transactions. Do you think they'll believe us? He's powerful, isn't he? Sylvia stopped pacing, her eyes meeting his. Powerful men fall all the time. All it takes is someone brave enough to stand up to them. Lucas hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but how do we make sure he doesn't stop us before we even start? Sylvia considered this, her mind flashing back to the cold threat in John's voice as he disappeared into the shadows of the mansion. We have to be smart, careful, and we need help. The next day, Sylvia contacted an old friend, Carla Dawson, a journalist known for her tenacity and fearlessness in exposing corruption. Carla had once helped Sylvia publicize a story about systemic issues in Savannah's foster care system, and Sylvia trusted her implicitly. When Carla arrived at Sylvia's apartment, her sharp eyes immediately zeroed in on the evidence laid out on the table. This is big, she said, her voice tinged with both excitement and caution. You're not just poking a bear, you're poking a whole den of them. I don't care, Sylvia replied firmly. This man destroyed my family. He's hurt countless others, and he's gotten away with it for too long. Carla leaned forward, examining the ledger. These transactions alone are enough to open an investigation, but we need more if we're going to bring him down completely. We need a smoking gun. Lucas, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. What about the papers in the gate? They led us to the mansion. Maybe there's more. Carla looked at him, a flicker of admiration in her gaze. Smart kid. Do you think there's more hidden somewhere else? Sylvia thought about the journal entry from her father. The truth is in the gate. She hadn't fully explored the property, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there were more secrets waiting to be uncovered. That evening, armed with flashlights and determination, Sylvia, Lucas, and Carla returned to the mansion. The woods felt even darker than before, the shadows stretching long and foreboding as they approached the crumbling estate. But this time, Sylvia wasn't afraid. If her father had left behind more clues, she was going to find them. Inside, the house was eerily silent. The three of them moved carefully through the decaying rooms, their footsteps muffled by dust and debris. Sylvia led them to the study, where the ledger had been found, and began searching every inch of the room. It was Lucas who found it. Beneath a loose floorboard near the desk, he uncovered a small metal box. Sylvia's hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a stack of letters and a key. The letters, aged and fragile, bore her father's handwriting. Sylvia's heart raced as she carefully unfolded the topmost letter, her eyes scanning the words. My dearest Sylvia, it began, and her breath caught. Her father's words painted a vivid picture of the betrayal he had uncovered. He detailed how John Douglas, once a trusted partner, had been embezzling funds and using their business as a front for illicit activities. Charles Harper had planned to expose him, but John had learned of his intentions. I've hidden the truth in places only you can find, the letter concluded. The key is yours. Use it wisely, my brave girl. Sylvia clutched the letter tightly, tears welling in her eyes. He knew, she whispered. He knew John would come for him. Carla leaned over, studying the key. This must unlock something important. Any idea what it could be? Sylvia shook her head, her mind racing. No, but it has to be here somewhere. Lucas, who had been holding the metal box, pulled out another item, a map etched on the underside of the lid. It marked a location within the mansion's grounds. Looks like we're not done yet, Carla said, her voice steady. Let's find out what your father left behind. The map led them to the mansion's dilapidated garden, where the once beautiful landscape had been overtaken by nature. At the center of the garden stood an old stone fountain, its basin cracked and dry. Sylvia remembered playing near it as a child, her father always watching from the nearby bench. This is it, she said, her voice trembling. It's here. Lucas handed her the key, his eyes wide with anticipation. Sylvia knelt by the fountain's base, where the stonework bore faint etchings, a lock cleverly disguised within the ornate design. Her hands shook as she inserted the key and turned it. With a soft click, A hidden compartment opened, revealing a bundle of documents. Carla shone her flashlight over the papers. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Contracts, bank statements, everything. It's all here, proof of John's crimes." Sylvia felt a wave of relief and vindication wash over her. Her father's sacrifices hadn't been in vain. He had left her the tools to finish what he couldn't. Back at her apartment, Sylvia and Carla worked through the night, organizing the evidence into a comprehensive case. Lucas sat nearby, sketching the fountain and the key, a way of processing the whirlwind of events. By dawn, they were ready. Carla had contacted a trusted investigator who could ensure the evidence reached the authorities without interference. But Sylvia wasn't content to stop there. "I want the world to know the truth," she said firmly. "About my father, about John, about everything." Carla nodded. "Then let's make sure they hear it." With Carla's help, Sylvia arranged a press conference at New Horizons. She stood before a sea of reporters, the weight of her father's legacy resting on her shoulders. As cameras flashed and microphones buzzed, she recounted the story of betrayal, courage, and resilience. "My father was a man of integrity," Sylvia said, her voice strong. "He believed in doing what was right, even when it cost him everything. Today, I stand here to honor his memory and ensure that those who wronged him are held accountable." The room erupted into applause, the sound reverberating with a sense of justice finally being served. Within days, the evidence led to John Douglas's arrest. The media coverage was relentless, uncovering the depth of his corruption. Sylvia became a symbol of courage, her story inspiring others to stand up against injustice. Lucas, too, found his voice. His sketches of the events became a series of illustrations that accompanied news articles, capturing the emotional core of their journey. As the dust settled, Sylvia stood in her father's study, now restored as part of her childhood home. The ledger, the letters, and the key were displayed in a glass case, a tribute to the man who had taught her the value of integrity. Lucas joined her, his sketch pad tucked under his arm. "Do you think he'd be proud?" he asked. Sylvia smiled, her gaze distant. "I think he always was." Their journey wasn't over, but together, they had proven that courage and truth could triumph over even the darkest shadows. The story of Sylvia Harper and Lucas was one of resilience, redemption, and the power of standing up for what's right. The house that had once symbolized loss and unanswered questions now stood as a beacon of hope and restoration. Sylvia's efforts to reclaim her father's legacy had sparked not just a personal transformation, but also a communal one. The evidence she uncovered had exposed a network of corruption, and John Douglas was now awaiting trial. Sylvia's fight for justice had inspired others to stand up for truth, but the journey was far from over. Sylvia had turned her childhood home into more than just a place to confront her past. It had become the headquarters of New Horizons, a nonprofit dedicated to helping vulnerable youth find stability and purpose. The halls, once quiet and filled with memories, now echoed with the laughter and energy of children participating in workshops, art classes, and mentorship programs. Lucas had become a cornerstone of the program, his art now both a source of inspiration and a tool for healing. His sketches from their journey adorned the walls of the center, each one a story of resilience and hope. "You've really transformed this place," Carla said during a visit, her sharp journalist eyes soft with admiration. Sylvia smiled. "It's not just me. This place is a reflection of everyone who believed in something better." Lucas's life had changed in ways he never imagined. What began as street sketches to survive had turned into a flourishing passion. With Sylvia's encouragement, he began teaching art classes to other children in the program. His ability to connect with them, to understand their struggles, made him a natural mentor. One day, Sylvia walked into the studio to find Lucas guiding a group of kids through a mural project. The once guarded boy now stood confidently, his hands covered in paint as he explained the importance of telling stories through art. "Your students are lucky to have you," Sylvia said with a smile. Lucas glanced over, a rare grin breaking across his face. "They remind me of me, and it feels good to give them something I didn't have." Sylvia nodded, pride swelling in her chest. "You're doing more than you realize." Lucas. The success of New Horizons began to ripple outward, attracting support from the community. Local artists and business owners offered resources, while schools and other nonprofits partnered with Sylvia to expand the program's reach. Even Carla, who had reported on the story, continued to amplify the organization's impact through her writing. At a community event hosted in the now-restored garden of Sylvia's childhood home, the air buzzed with a sense of possibility. Families, volunteers, and children gathered to celebrate the program's achievements. Lucas unveiled a mural that he and the kids had created. A vibrant depiction of Savannah's resilience. With the iron gate at its center, vines blossoming into flowers, the crowd erupted into applause as Lucas stood beside his creation, his cheeks flushed with pride. Sylvia stepped onto the stage, her heart full as she addressed the group. "Tonight is about more than celebrating what we've accomplished," she began. "It's about recognizing what we can achieve when we come together. New Horizons is proof that even in our darkest moments, there's always light waiting to guide us." The applause grew louder, and Sylvia glanced at Lucas, who gave her a small nod. This wasn't just a victory for her, it was a new beginning for everyone involved. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Sylvia and Lucas sat on the porch, the garden lights casting a warm glow over the yard. "Do you ever think about what's next?" Lucas asked, his voice thoughtful. Sylvia looked at him, her gaze soft. "All the time. And I think next is whatever we choose to make it. For me, it's making sure this place continues to be a home for everyone who needs it." "And for me?" Lucas asked with a small smile. Sylvia chuckled. "For you, I think the sky's the limit." Lucas's expression turned serious. "Do you think your dad would be proud of what we've done?" Sylvia's chest tightened at the mention of her father. She reached out, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "I think he always knew this was possible, and he'd be proud of both of us. This journey taught us that the past doesn't define us, it guides us. The connections we build, the courage we find, and the hope we nurture are what truly shape our futures." If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can uncover more incredible stories of resilience and redemption. Thank you for being part of our journey.